you want tea or coffee or something, you have to go out on the courtyard, line up behind the retail point to get it. That's going to take you 10 or 15 minutes maybe. If you want to go to the bathroom, you can go there or over there. It's maybe about 5 or 10 minutes. And then inevitably your friend will text you saying, where are you? I'm lost. You say, well, I'm lost too. You've only got minutes for all of these things. You come back in, you're reading at the card, you maybe the carpet's gone up, and it's fuel be made of that kind of thing. Now, that can be what happens. It can also be wonderful, but that can happen in the modern theatre experience. Shakespeare didn't bother with any of that nonsense. He just threw you in and threw you out at the end. Now, I mentioned the set for Hansel and Gretel, which they're setting up now because I believe they're doing a dress rehearsal today. Now, Shakespeare wouldn't have bothered with this either. This is a modern set that is being imposed onto the structure. Again, if you Photoshop out the floor thing there, and the chairs and tables that look very modern, and the tents, he wouldn't have bothered with any of that. It's just what would have existed already. And why would you need a set when you've got these wonderful columns and a very big stage? I mean, his was a theatre of the imagination. At the most, in Shakespeare's time, they might have had a couple of chairs to show where a king sat or something, because that was important. Maybe some hangings at the back, but essentially a bare stage, very minimal staging. Theatre of imagination, and we know that as Shakespeare literally tells us. At the start of Henry V, for example, a character comes out on stage, he's called the chorus, and he talks directly to the audience and says, imagine that this wooden ode contains the vasty fields of France. In other words, imagine that we're in France right now in this theatre. The play is set in France, right? We can't produce knights on horseback and castles and things, so you just have to imagine it. So that's how they rolled back in those days. That's basically someone coming out and saying, guys, you're looking at a play, deal with it. It's really modern when you think about it. We didn't start doing that again in the 20th century. Also, because it's daytime, when you're watching a play here, you can see the actors. Imagine those guys there are the actors. You can see them, they can see you. Although not great from this vantage point, there are better views, obviously, right? And so that creates this, and also there are people around you on all sides, as it were, so it's very immersive, number one. But also that creates a dynamic relationship between audience and performers. That's just a fancy way of saying, yeah, if you didn't like what they were doing, you could yell at them and throw things at them. I'm going to demonstrate, and this is a lot easier when there are no actors on stage, because they'll take you literally. These guys are all good. They know what I like. So you could do this. You could go, get off, you suck, bad actors, go home. I've had enough, boring. But don't forget, the actors could yell back at you. Leave me alone. I went to drama school. You still suck. I've got an agent. Still suck. Go home. Two-way conversation. By the same token, if you had something rotten in your pocket that you wanted to offload, maybe a bit of fruit or a pie, and pie is a meat-based food, as you would know, so that's going to smell after a while, you could totally throw them at the actors on stage. Now, don't forget though then, the actors could then pick them up off the floor or their head or whatever and throw them back at you. So there'd be an enormous food fight happening at certain points. Now this sounds like a lot of fun, but actually it would have been a bit tough for the actors in reality because number one, they didn't have a director. You know, by a director I mean someone going, darling, can you move there? I want you to feel this emotion, whatever. This is your character. Let me see your character. They didn't do any of that. They just had someone standing at the side of the stage called a stage keeper who had a master copy of the script and made sure that you didn't screw up essentially. You all knew what you had to do. Lead actor played the lead role, boy actor played, we'll get to it in a second, comic actor played. You could learn a new script in 2 days. You all had your preordained moves that you came up with as a lead actor, that kind of thing. So you were fine. The other thing is that actors also only were given their parts. This is where we get the term from. Your lines, your words on a piece or several pieces of paper with just maybe a couple of words of the previous actor's words before yours, so you could listen and know when to come in. They did this because paper was really expensive, so they'd never give you the whole script. And also, imagine, you could sell that whole script if you had it to another theatre company and make money. and that's how writers made their money, technically, so they wouldn't want you to do that. Also, I bet you guys know that at this time, 400 years ago, women were pretty much shut out of professional theatre. So all the female parts were played by young boys aged between about 8 and 13. So if you were watching a production of Romeo and Juliet, for example, the role would be played by somebody perhaps your age, because it would be however old the lead actor was. If he was 32 or 38, I can't remember how old Richard Burbage was at the time of that play, but he would play the lead role. Didn't matter how old he was, always played the lead role. And Juliet would be played by maybe a young boy aged between about, 8 and 13, wearing a nice wig and some white face paint and a lovely dress. So that's your romantic company itself, and a 12-year-old boy wearing a dress. Cool. Not dodgy on any level at all. Also, I think not many of the guides mention this, maybe one or two, but it's important. At this time, 400 years ago, nobody in this part of England, or indeed the whole of England really, sounded the way they do now. Now, many of you folk who are not from my country, that's all of you actually, would probably think I sound a bit like an English person, because our accents are a little bit similar. Okay, that's fair. But nobody sounded like us 400 years ago around here. I'll give you a quick example. I'm going to say a line from a Shakespeare play, first of all, in my modern accent. Shakespeare's words, we have not changed them, but it's my voice, right? Cry havoc and let's slip the dogs of war. So you can hear there are some strange kind of Shakespeare words there. You might know the line itself actually, but it's my voice. That's how we do professional Shakespeare in English speaking. You use you're encouraged to use your own voice, whatever it may be, your own accent, and speak Shakespeare's words. Nice. They also obviously use their own voices. Their own voices were quite a bit different. I'll give you an example. Same words, but in the original pronunciation from around these parts. Croy hada and let's slap the dogs of war. I sound like a pirate. And it was a far more rich and musical kind of diet. And for my English friend here might recognise or somebody else as well. Yeah, a little bit of West Country, a bit of Midlands, a bit of Northern. That's because it's the original accent for all our English diaspora accents today. And do you know the modern diaspora accent, I mean English speaking person who speaks English but not in England, that most closely resembles that original accent? It's not mine, it's not an Australian person's, it's my friends from North America. Who's from North America once again? I forget, where are you folks from? South Carolina and Kansas. So, okay, so some regional differences, but for the most part, the classic mid-range kind of American accent, rotate and say war instead of war, and it's a little bit similar, that generalized American accent in both LA, New York, and maybe Dallas, if you hear the same kind of accent. That's how they sounded back then, closer anyway, than what I do now. And that makes sense, because folk from this part of the world went to your part of the world back then, and it got trapped in amber. Whereas when they went to my country, they sounded a bit different. Confusingly, I say war now because my wife is from America, and we spent 12 years in South Korea teaching English. And everybody who teaches English in South Korea ends up sounding like that, and the students sound like that. So that just confuses things. Anyway, clearly I'm geeking out on this, so I will stop now and ask you if there are any questions about any of this.
When did the superstition about not mentioning the Scottish play come?
I remember reading that. You mean Macbeth? I'm going to say this. I don't care. Macbeth. That happened quite late, well after Shakespeare dies. And I think my theory, and I think this goes along with something I've read, is that it's the most performed play to this day. It's the one you usually do. So the more times you do a play, the more time things are going to go wrong. So things started going wrong with productions of Macbeth because simply it was performed a lot. And then people went, oh, it must be because of the play. So this superstition developed. It isn't based on anything. However, if I'm in a room and I'm working on a play, I will respect people who have that superstition, kind of. But I also believe that if you're doing the play, you can say it. I'm not quite... It's terrible that there are rules for superstitions, because at the end of the day, I don't care, and nor should you. And it means nothing. it's something that is completely un-Shakespearean in that sense. But it's an interesting thing that's developed. It's kind of like the authorship question. Again, that's completely nonsense as well. Anyone who thinks that Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare, sorry, that's nonsense. And I could do a whole story about why that's nonsense, but we don't have the time, seriously. It's that kind of thing. There's a couple of other myths that I'm going to bust along the way as well. There's one in particular that I'm going to bust in about 10 minutes. It's another one. I mean, cool if you're into that. You know, if you don't want to say the words during a play or whatever, that's fine. But it is just, it's a good question. Any other thoughts or questions? Yes. Oh, easy, because you know when Shakespeare went to school, as I said earlier, he got he got a better education than I got when I went to school, because he learned classical literature and stories. I didn't learn any of that stuff. I had to wait till I was 16 when I could do classic studies. Grammar school education, as hard as it was much more stringent than anything we are trained in today. Now, as far as geography, okay, so Shakespeare talks about Denmark and Bohemia and all these other countries, but he gets it wrong. He gives Bohemia, which is Czech Republic now, a sea coast. So his geography is terrible. Ergo, he never went there. That's pretty good evidence that he probably never travelled. But you read every other play from the time, they always talk about, they set stuff in Verona or Denmark because it's cool. Ooh, if we show them in an Italian setting, everyone thinks we're so learned and smart. But if you look closely at Shakespeare's geography, it's terrible. So most scholars agree that, okay, he was very diverse in talking about different countries, but he never travelled. He didn't really know much geography. And it wouldn't have got taught. As I said, you only learned Latin and Greek. You didn't get taught geography, social studies, English literature, none of that stuff. This was the Renaissance. Everybody bowed at the altar of the ancient Greeks and Romans. That's all they knew about. So whenever there's a classical reference in a Shakespeare play, you can bet your bottom dollar. That is very correct, that's very learned, and he knows his stuff. Giving Bohemia a seacoast? Idiot. Doesn't know a thing about geography. I'm sorry. Wonderful imagination, but no geography. No. I mean, and to just take that further, he writes Macbeth set in Scotland in the 11th century. People talk about cannons and stuff. He doesn't care. There's no attempt at accuracy. There's a play set in ancient Rome. I think it's Antony and Cleopatra. People talk about Rome being full of fireplaces and chimneys. Ridiculous. He's actually talking about London. Whenever you read a Shakespeare play and there's someone commenting on the state of the country and the mob and all that stuff and the politics, he's talking about London. He very rarely writes directly about London, sets a play, but you can bet, because he knows London. He doesn't know anywhere else. He grew up in Stratford and lived in London. That was probably it. So any play he writes is about his world, which is why you can get away today with doing Shakespeare in modern dress, because that's what Shakespeare did. Every Shakespeare production originally was a modern dress production. They wore their own style of clothes. So that's the thing we often keep going around and use the understanding. We have one-way system here for instance. Come up one way. Okay, so the open door you now see in front of you here to the left. gather up in front of me just here. And you can come fairly close to me too. And this also blocks the wind from me, so the other day. So remember I said that the original version of Shakespeare's Globe, number 2 now, got shut down in 1600. Their leader, Oliver Cromwell, dies. And when he dies in 1658, everyone's kind of closed out of it. They're kind of like, come back, we don't know about this anymore. Please, King, come back. Unfortunately, they cut his throat, so that was problematic. So what they had to do instead was invite his son, who was in exile in France, to take over the throne. He's called Charles III. He comes and takes over the throne. It's called the Restoration, as the monarchy is restored. So Charles III brings back all those fun, cool adult things, and including theatre, right? But theatre changes in 2 really important ways. Number 1, women are allowed to perform for the first time, so that's really good. But number 2, everything theatre-wise moves indoors, and I see the irony of that as we are a little bit cold here on the courtyard. We will go inside in a moment. Now there had been some indoor theatre in Shakespeare's time, but now it was all indoor theatre, and that instantly makes theatre more expensive, elite, middle class. Everyone has come to a theatre recently and been told what you can blame the Restoration for that state of affairs. This whole era of Shakespeare's, which I'd like to call Barbie movie, stopped in 69, was over forever. And the thing that happens is Shakespeare himself dies in 1616, way before the Civil War. So everyone kind of forgets about Shakespeare, and he's not really performed for hundreds of years. It wasn't until maybe the 1800s that everyone realizes, oh gosh, he's a genius, he's rediscovered. Today. And then naturally people go, how did he do what he did back in the day, like 300 years ago? None of these buildings had existed anymore. They all disappeared in like the 17th century. So fast forward to 1949. We knew a little bit, we had some images, but they weren't great. Fast forward to 1949, and a man called Sam Wanamaker is here in London. You might have heard of him. Actor and director, American actor and director. And he's here shooting a movie as an actor, Shakespeare fan. So he goes looking for the site of the original Globe. You can't believe there's basically nothing there. So he decides he's going to reconstruct the original Globe. So he starts officially with this in 1970. Takes him a while to get that here. So, 27 years to build this one. Globe number 1, 1 year. Globe number 2, 1 year. What's going on? The same one makes himself as well, I'm Sam Wanamaker. I'm an American Jewish man. Nobody here wants to get they didn't drive it, but it would be tough to get the building done in the 80s and 90s. So he had to get really innovative with his fundraising. And one of the fun things he did was he said to a whole lot of rich people, powerful people, and some famous people, hey, if you give me £500 each, you can have your name on the paving stones in front of the theatre.
That is brilliant.
All sorts of famous people here and stuff, but also rich people, powerful people. Now, just over there where the young people are is actually a name or two, and I won't be able to show you that stood there. But I'll tell you what there's the name John Cleese. You may have heard of John Cleese, the comedian. When he was asked to give us money, he actually said, I don't know, guys. And then Shakespeare's wife said, well, look, your former colleague might be paying you.
He's laughing all the time. Sam Wanamaker
He's going to give us money too. He's going to have a stone. You want him to be right next to you. And then John Cleese thought about it for a second and said, okay, I'll give you the money, but on one condition. Just tell my
What happened to both Shakespeare's Globe?
I'm not sure.
What went down? What happened to the second one? Down.
But he got a glass up because his stone is actually bigger than John Cleese's.
Wanamaker Theatre.
I'm not sure. We'll see how we
And
go.
he builds this theatre.
Oh, actually, the courtyard is open, so when we finish, you might be able to.
Just everyone whose name is in the ground.
So basically,
Their
all these
help,
people
their
are
money,
doing
their expertise. And they all help to build this globe. And it took ages to build.
Now, of course, this is not the real William Shakespeare. Little spoiler, he's actually. But Sam Wanamaker, told anyone that would listen, wouldn't it be funny, guys, if we had the name William Shakespeare as a sponsor on the courtyard? And everyone said, that's not actually that funny. What's the point of that? But he persisted because he was the boss, and he actually did this the hard way. He actually got a whole lot of telephone books in both England and America. I kid you not, he called up all the Shakespeares listed in the phone books until he found a modern day William Shakespeare. I think I lived in America somewhere, who said, oh, I'll give you £500. So he got his name here. Now, Sam Wanamaker did so well with this exercise that along the way, he also found a Susan Shakespeare, no relation, just wanted to give us money. There's a Jennifer Shakespeare over there above Ben Kingsley, the film actor, Gandhi, Sexy Beast, hello. There's a Matthew Shakespeare over there. There's about 9 or 10 different Shakespeares there because of what Sam Wanamaker did. His vision for this place was for it to be more than just a building. He wanted it to have a theatre company attached, tourist department, research, all these good things. He got his wish, obviously, but he actually died just a few years before this was finished. But they carry on the legacy today, and in more recent years, they've done stuff here like gender and and also work in the area of anti-racism. So we try to stay on the one hand a modern, progressive commercial theatre company, but on the other hand a place of research. So many things. That's why it's quite chaotic around here at times. This is quiet. This is quiet, obviously, just before Christmas, just after summer. Now, folks, just before we head into the lovely warm lobby foyer or foyer, depending where you're from, can I just ask that you turn off these devices at the top, and then you can just unplug the headset from the receiver, removing your headset, obviously, and that'll help our colleagues here with returning these. So just come over here with me. Fantastic. So folks, if you could just put your boxes into that red basket and then sling your headsets over that rung there. Thank you very much, Harry. And once you've done that, folks, if you could just follow me this way, and we'll gather you just inside here in the lobby. Thank you very much. Hi, folks. Could you just pop in here with a little... Thank you very much. Okay, folks, just come on in here, my tour group, just through into here once you're done with the headsets and things. Just be a couple of minutes. Thanks very much, folks. I've gone a little bit over, I'm very sorry, but we're not far away from finishing. Just over here, folks. So I just... Oh, well, I think some people probably have appointments, but yeah, we can go up to an hour sometimes. So I just thought I'd show you a couple of things before we wrap up this morning. Here is a costume. This obviously represents Elizabeth I, who was the Queen when Shakespeare was mostly working. Myth busting number 3 or 4. The real Queen Elizabeth I from history never ever came to a play at Shakespeare's original Globe. That never happened. That's a myth. You may have seen it in a movie. Movies aren't often real. That's all I'll say about that. Now, but what did happen was in 1997, when they opened the Outdoor Globe that we were just in, there was a Royal Gala opening performance, right? And as part of that, and it was a celebration, it wasn't just one play, it was all sorts of things. And as part of that celebration, made especially for her, and she entered the theatre that night on the back of a horse. You can see a picture of it over there coming into the theatre. She looked up, and there in the middle gallery was Elizabeth II, the real Royal Gala opening performance, of course. But I don't think the actor realised that. She got a bit of a surprise, and she sort of just waved up at Queen Elizabeth II, okay? And then Queen Elizabeth II waved back. So they had this nice connection, the two Elizabeths. And then Queen Elizabeth II turned to somebody on her left and said, "Didn't the horse do well?" It's a true story. If you didn't catch that joke, don't worry about it, it's okay. Over here in front of you is a book. This is Shakespeare's first folio. It was published in 1623, just 7 years after Shakespeare died. And it contained 36 of his plays, including 18 which had never been printed before. So it makes it the only source for over half of Shakespeare's plays. Without this book, you wouldn't have Macbeth, I'm sorry, I said it, there we go, or As You Like It, for example. They just wouldn't exist. He'd be a minor playwright at best, probably. When they published this in 1623, they only printed about 750 copies, of which we only have about 200 left today. This is one of them. So this is a 400-year-old book, but it's valuable not because of that. It's valuable because it's one of Shakespeare's original first folios. It's probably worth about 10 million US dollars. So just be careful if you want to leave. Now, the other thing I just want to talk about in detail before we wrap really is what is behind that brick wall over there. That is the Sam Wanamaker Playhouse. That's our indoor space. That's where we do stuff. Should do everything in the winter time. Technically, that's where we do stuff in the winter. And what it actually is a reconstructed archetypal early Jacobean indoor playhouse. Translation, it's just our best guess at what one of the first indoor theatres in England looked like, even before the Civil War, or the Restoration even, right? Now, Shakespeare would have been familiar with a space like that a little bit towards the end of his career. Now, we can't go in there because we don't do tours in there. We'd basically ruin it if we went in there with groups. It's too small and delicate. But if you could pass me that picture just there, thank you. And I can show you a picture of what it looks like inside there. That's what it looks like inside the set. Now, it's perfectly safe because the actors wear fireproof costumes. And also, let's say an actor gets caught on fire standing next to a candle while he's performing, he or she or they are performing. What they don't do is call out, "Help, I'm on fire." You just don't do that in theatres, obviously, right, when you think about that carefully. So instead, they call out the name of their character. So if I'm being Hamlet, for example, to be or not to be, that is the question. Hamlet, 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 whether 'tis noble in the mind who suffered that. Hamlet, 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 and that tells everyone on stage with them that they're on fire, if they haven't already seen or smelt that. And they deal with it quietly and calmly without panicking the audience, basically, right? Speaking of fire, it consists of you just running out those 4 doors. But we've got 4. The original, we believe, only had 2, so that's the secret there. Also, there are sprinklers on the top of the roof there. You might have noticed those. And every single wooden thing in this entire complex has been fireproof with a kind of thin layer